Starting in one moment, everybody. Hope everybody's having a great day. Let me get my sound right. We still got to do this. I got to do extra stuff to go live on LinkedIn every day because LinkedIn doesn't have a built-in streaming. What's the word? Streaming apparatus. So you got to use a third party, which I have. Thing is, you got to put the information in every single time. You got to change it every single time. I have no idea why LinkedIn makes it that complicated these days. Everybody's doing live streaming. But anyway, any of y'all know anybody on LinkedIn, tell them to get their shit together so we can actually do this more seamlessly. What we're going to talk about here today, actually, before we get into this, shout out to anybody who came over here from TikTok, because TikTok actually banned me. I got banned from TikTok yesterday. Well, temporarily, not banned. I got suspended, let's say. I got a 1-week suspension from TikTok yesterday. They claim that I was sharing election, quote unquote, misinformation in a live that I was doing yesterday. And they gave me a 1-week suspension from TikTok. That really did happen in the middle of my live yesterday, even though all the other platforms that I was live on, Rumble, YouTube, X, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook, none of them gave me a ban, but I got a ban or a suspension from TikTok. So shout out to everybody from TikTok who is over here watching. So right now we are not live on TikTok, but I'm live on 6 other platforms here today. And I'm going to be live today, tomorrow. We don't do the weekend. Monday, Tuesday, I'm going to be traveling next week. And then TikTok will be back live on Wednesday with everybody. So just so y'all know the schedule. So what we're going to talk about here today are some of the mistakes that the Democrats made in this process in losing the White House, control of the White House. We got a pause connection on Instagram. Now, I didn't get a single pause connection on Instagram yesterday. They already started with the shenanigans here with the pause connections. But we're going to talk about what mistakes the Democratic Party, just as a party, mistakes that they made leading up to Trump ending up winning. It is not necessarily their mistakes are the reason that they lost, but did it contribute? Absolutely, it did. That's what we're going to talk about here today. And really, the thing I really want to get to, I'll tell you about it when we get to it. So let me introduce myself for those who don't know me. My name is Dre Baldwin. Many know me as Dre all day, former 9-year pro athlete, author of 35 books, creator of Done For TEDxTalks, created this brand called Work on Your Game. My job over here is to help you perform at your highest level, do so consistently, and produce more results at what you do. Our focus is on personal and professional development, all based on delivering results, as I just said. And that's us helping you deliver so you get more of what you want in life. So let's talk about the mistakes the Democrats made in this process. Let's start with the biggest mistake they made, which is all around the current president, Mr. Joe Biden. They made several mistakes when it came to Joe Biden. First of all, I said this in 2020, and I did the same thing in 2020 that I did this year, is that I did 2 videos, and you can find these videos on YouTube. You can find clips of them when I cut them up on all the other social media platforms. I did one video explaining why one candidate will win. Then I did another video explaining why the other candidate will win, because as a critical thinker, I have the ability to argue both sides of any situation. Even if I have a personal opinion, one side or other, I can argue the other side. And in 2020, I said the same thing that I'll say to you right now, that one of the reasons that I figured Joe Biden might not win is because Joe Biden doesn't have any fans. Nobody really likes Joe Biden. All right, who's a fan of Joe Biden? All right, if you're listening to this and you're a fan of Joe Biden, raise your hand and tell us how, when, and where you became a fan. Nobody's really a fan of Joe Biden. Joe Biden is just a guy who's been in politics for 50 years, and he's the guy that they put up there and said, all right, we just got to get Trump out of there. So whoever we put up, all the votes are not going to be for that person. They're going to be against Trump. And seeing the force of nature that Trump was, is, and looks like he will be. I mean, he's not going to run for election anymore. He's done. But I think the Democrats said, all right, we just got to throw somebody out there. And again, we just keep repeating the same things over and over again. Maybe it'll work. And it allegedly, quote unquote, worked in the 2020 election for Joe Biden, which we're going to get into in 1 second. So the first mistake was putting somebody up there who didn't really have the power to galvanize, because no one was really a fan, as I say, of Joe Biden, just like nobody was really a fan of Hillary Clinton, and nobody was a fan of Kamala Harris. So they just, again, as I said this yesterday, they progressively just got worse with the quality of candidates that the Democrats have been throwing out there ever since Barack Obama left office. The candidates have just continually got worse. So the first thing was actually having Joe Biden. Now, the next mistake they made was not realizing that Joe Biden was in cognitive decline. I think all of us can agree that Joe Biden is in cognitive decline. And it was obvious that people could tell and they could see this. Someone asked me about, I'll answer that at the end. And I'm going to do a whole album on that, as a matter of fact. LVSMPO, who just asked me a question on YouTube. But let me continue what I'm saying. People could see that Joe Biden was starting to slip mentally. It was obvious that he was slipping. The problem is, and I've talked about this many times over the last month, the mainstream media has failed to accept that they failed to do anything that would possibly sound critical of the left that they're supposed to be protecting. And this is the problem with mainstream media. I talked about this again heavily over the last couple of days. Mainstream media is designed, rigged, if you will, to protect the left and to attack the right, especially with Trump around. Now, I think when Trump leaves, it will die down maybe a little bit. We're talking 4 or 5 years from now. But the problem with the left, in the media rather, is that they are so heavily left that, first of all, they've lost the trust of the general public. This is the reason why when the Washington Post and the LA Times and last week before the election, they wanted to come out and give their endorsement, who they wanted to endorse for president, the newspapers themselves. And these are you got a Paul's Connection on Instagram. These are their editorial boards. And the bosses of those companies, I don't know who runs the LA Times, but the boss of the Washington Post is Jeff Bezos, the Amazon guy. He came out and said, we're not going to do that. We are not going to show our hand and that we're leaning one way or another when it comes to the presidential election. And I don't know if y'all saw this when I did my live on journalism and I trashed the journalistic industry, which is damn near on life support right now, if it even exists anymore, is that people don't trust the mainstream media anymore because they all have a leaning. They all are leaning one direction or another. And this was endemic of it. When the Washington Post, or Jeff Bezos, said the Washington Post is not going to endorse a presidential candidate, the editors, the writers at the Washington Post got mad. A couple of them quit their jobs and a bunch of them went on social media and bitched about it. Like, how are we not allowed to go and say who we want to support? We've been doing this for all these years. It's tradition, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And Joe Biden, why did I say Joe Biden? Jeff Bezos, same initials. Give me credit. So Jeff Bezos said one of the reasons why we're not going to do it is because we have lost the trust of the general public. Y'all don't see this? Do y'all not see the general public does not trust the mainstream media anymore? We are less trusted than Congress. Because there's polls that they do every year of American citizens. I've never been questioning one of these polls, but these polls that they always talk about, they question somebody. And the question was, what institutions do you trust the least? And it used to be that Congress was the least trusted and the media was a little bit above Congress. But it got so bad, and Jeff Bezos said this in his letter that he wrote, he said that it flipped. That now Congress is more trusted than, and Congress is just the people who make the laws in America, they are more trusted than the mainstream media. Nobody trusts the mainstream media anymore. And Jeff Bezos said, we can't keep ignoring reality. Now, reality is undefeated. We can't ignore reality. We need to start to gain back the trust of the general public. And we're going to start by not picking a side in this political election. And we're going to at least try to look like we are objectively reporting on what is happening. And they got mad. The people who write there got mad that they were told, you're going to do your damn jobs and be objective writers rather than show everybody what side you're on. And this is crazy. And this is one of the reasons why the mainstream media, it can no longer be trusted. I talked about this yesterday, even on TikTok before they kicked me off TikTok yesterday, that I was watching the interactive maps last night or the night before last, whatever night that was, when the election was running Tuesday night and into Wednesday morning. And I saw that once Donald Trump got to 267 electoral votes, you need 270 to secure the election, that they stopped updating the maps. It went about 4 or 5 hours before they updated that map. They updated it. By the time I was finished my live, the map was updated. But all up through the morning, they did not update that map. It was stuck on 267 for Trump. Kamala's number didn't change either. And they didn't want to update the map, because even though it was obvious that he was winning all the rest of the swing states. Trump won damn near all the swing states. He flipped Georgia, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina. I think he had North Carolina. But he went and won all those swing states. It was obvious that he was going to win, but they didn't want to update the maps. This whole thing is that the media is trying to protect the left. I'm saying all that to say this, that the media protected the fact that Joe Biden was in cognitive decline. It was obvious that he was. If Trump was declining the way Joe Biden was, do you think the media would hesitate to talk about it? You think they would hesitate to talk about it on the news and have segments on it, and people would write articles about it? People would run all day with that. I keep getting these pause connections on Instagram today. Instagram must not like what I'm talking about. So when I was talking about other things, Instagram didn't do this, but they're doing it now. Anyway, the media was protecting the fact that Joe Biden was in cognitive decline. Now, why does this matter? It matters because I believe that the White House and the Biden administration were encouraging the media to protect the fact and hide the fact, or try to shield. They weren't really hiding it because we could all see it. Try to shield the fact that Joe Biden was starting to fall apart mentally, which meant, especially leading up to the 2024 election cycle, it meant that he either A, wouldn't be able to beat Trump in another campaign cycle, because the campaign cycle, it appears, if you just look at the schedules that the nominees have, is a very exhausting schedule. It's a very demanding schedule, not exhausting, but demanding, and it could be exhausting. And if the guy's already falling apart mentally, how is he going to do that? So that was one thing. The other thing is, if he ends up doing the campaign, because he only had served one term, so he technically does have the right to run for re-election as an incumbent. If he does run and he's still falling apart mentally, he's going to look bad during the campaign, and Trump's going to dominate him at the voting box, at the ballot box. So the Democrats made a mistake here. This is what we're talking about here, Democrat mistakes. First mistake that they made was not getting Joe Biden out of there sooner. They ran with the illusion that he would be able to, I don't know, what were they thinking they were going to do? Were they going to run the same campaign they did in 2020, where it was, and Donald Trump frequently called him Joe Biden instead of Joe Biden, because he was just hiding out in his basement and just not showing face and not doing any interviews and speaking as little as possible, because the Democrats bet that they could do enough that even without Biden speaking, he could possibly beat Donald Trump in the election. And technically he did. History says that Joe Biden won the 2020 election. We're going to get to that in 1 second. And I think they might have thought that they could get away with that again. I don't think they would have gotten away with it twice. I don't think they would have. I could hear that in the polls, he wasn't doing too well, even up to the very early debate they had, which I believe was in July of this year. So the one debate that Trump and Biden had, if you saw that debate, if you didn't see it, you should watch it. It's on YouTube for free. Joe Biden was looking terrible. He was stumbling over his words and saying stuff that didn't quite make sense. And everyone knew after that debate, okay, it's a wrap for Joe Biden. Either as a wrap, and A, if he continues to run, Trump's going to trounce him electorally. And he did. Trump trounced Kamala anyway. And Kamala's not in mental decline. At least it doesn't appear that she is. I don't think she was ever that high up in the first place, but different conversation for a different day. And the other thing is, either A, he's going to get trounced there, or B, we got to replace this guy. The problem is they were trying to replace him in July, and the election is in November. So you only had August, September, October. You only had about 4 months and less than that at that point to replace Joe Biden. So this put the Democrats in this scrambling position. Now we got to replace Joe Biden. So I believe, I don't know this for a fact, but I believe what they tried to do was try to convince Joe to step down on his own. And he at first resisted. He didn't want to step down. Hey, I won the nomination, which he did, the Democratic nomination in 2020. Then I was not challenged in the nomination for 2024. I have only served one term. All right, y'all put me up here for you all to beat Donald Trump. I did beat him. Technically, he beat him. And we're going to talk about that in a moment. That's a conversation for today. And I have a right to defend my winning position. Joe Biden was pushing back. Even though he was mentally declining, he wasn't that far declined that he couldn't say what he wanted to say. All right, every once in a while, Joe Biden, not once in a while, but I would say about 70 to 80% of the time, Joe Biden says what he means to say. Another 20, 30% of the time, you can tell that he's an old guy who's starting to lose it mentally, as he did during that debate. So there was a pushback. There was a fight within the powers that be at the Democratic Party, people whose names that y'all might not know, such as people like Nancy Pelosi, who's really running the Democratic Party. It ain't Kamala, it ain't Biden, it's her. And they finally got Joe to understand, listen, if you don't step aside, then we're going to invoke some legal statutes against you to push you out. And we're going to make the case, and we're going to make you look bad. And you're not going to get the golden parachute of getting out of here the way that you would if you would just admit publicly that you're stepping aside, you're doing it voluntarily. So I don't know if any of you who still believes in Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny thinks that Joe Biden stepped aside because he wanted to. He stepped aside because he had to. He was forced to step aside, and they finally got the person with the most influence, let's just say, from the outside of Nancy Pelosi in the Democratic Party, which is former President Barack Obama. They got Obama to finally run up on Joe Biden and say, look, Joe, this is kind of what we got to do here. All right, you got to step aside. So Joe Biden finally, grudgingly, stepped aside. And here's what happened. When he stepped aside, the Democrats' original plan, and again, this is all what I believe to be true. This is not things that I'm reporting as I wasn't there. So we only can go off what we believe. What I believe to be true is that the Democrats planned on having an open primary, that they were going to get Joe Biden to admit that he was leaving. So now Joe Biden is leaving. So we know that he's going to finish out his term, which doesn't quite make sense. If you can't run a campaign, how can you run the country? We know Joe Biden ain't running the country right now, right? Again, none of you believes that, do you? All right. Again, you believe in Santa Claus and Easter Bunny. Maybe you believe that. He ain't running the country. And they were going to have an open primary to where a bunch of people who thought they wanted to run, could jump in and all put their names in. And then when the Democratic National Convention happened, which was a month later, then people can choose which of these candidates do we want. So it just would have been the same as a normal primary cycle, just shortened, because they were going to get Joe out. And once Joe admits that he's out, somebody got to step in and take the spot. The problem is Joe Biden checkmated the Democratic Party because, again, he got moved out against his will. He didn't move out on his own. He got moved out against his will. Just like in a corporation, when someone, or any bureaucracy, when someone does something wrong and the powers that be tell them, look, you got to go. We either fire you and make you look bad publicly, or you can resign. And that's the same thing they did to Joe Biden. We can fire you or you can resign. He said, all right, I'll resign. Finally, he took enough pressure. He decided to resign. They were going to just have an open primary. But here's what Joe Biden did. Joe Biden, when he posted on social media that he was going to step down from running for the 2024 election, he didn't say I'm stepping down from being president. He's still technically president. He said, I'm going to step down from running for the election. And then the next thing that he said, the very next breath, he said, I am putting my full support behind Kamala Harris as the person to replace me. Now, there are a couple complications with this. One is that Joe Biden had raised all this donor money, and it's not really he raised the money. The Democratic Party raised the money, and he was the guy. So all the money that they would use for their campaign went to Joe Biden. And if Joe Biden had stepped aside and it wasn't Kamala, then all that money would have to go back, and a new person would have to raise all new money from the beginning, which I don't think would have been impossible. They still could have raised money. And the Democrats, for the last, ever since Trump came around, so we got 2016, 2020, 2024, every year they grossly outraised campaign money over Donald Trump. All three elections, 2016, 2020, 2024, the Democratic candidate has raised a lot more money in donations than Donald Trump did. Yet, Donald Trump won 2 out of 3, might have won all 3. We'll get to that in one moment. So the thing is, if Kamala had been off the ticket, then they would have had to re-raise that money. I don't think they would have had a problem re-raising the money. But Joe Biden saying that put the Democrats in a tough position to where they kind of couldn't go against it. Now, why is this? Well, let's remember how Joe Biden chose Kamala Harris in the first place. Same way he chose Ketanji Brown Jackson for the Supreme Court. He announced, I'm going to pick a black woman. Joe Biden, pandered to black Americans in multiple ways. Y'all all remember the infamous clip of him talking to Charlemagne the God on the Breakfast Club, where he said to Charlemagne, this is via Zoom, if you got to choose between me and Donald Trump, you ain't black. Y'all remember Joe Biden saying that? Ridiculous thing for him to say. Said it right to Charlemagne's face. Charlemagne said nothing. But Charlemagne is always claiming he does a little bit of lightweight race hustling and claims that he's an independent when he's not. Charlemagne's a Democrat. But anyway, other thing Joe Biden did was says, I'm going to choose a black woman to be my vice president. He's saying he didn't say I'm going to pick the most qualified person. He didn't say I'm going to pick the person who can best help me. He didn't say I'm going to pick the person who's best to be number 2 in command since I'm going to be the leader if I become president. He said I'm going to pick a black woman. So he was playing the identity politics game, and he did, and he chose Kamala Harris. When he became president, he did the same thing when it was time to replace the Supreme Court justice. He chose Ketanji Brown Jackson. Y'all don't know who she is. That's the woman who, when she was, I think she's a woman, the woman who, when she was being vetted by the powers that be and being interviewed and all that stuff publicly, someone asked her, what is a woman? And Ketanji Brown Jackson froze up and refused to answer the question, what is a woman? If you didn't see that, look it up on YouTube. It's still out there. So this is what Joe Biden did. He was playing the identity politics game. Now, why does this matter? This matters because as soon as he said that, he put the Democrats in a very tough position of, if they said, well, no, we're not going to do what Joe Biden said, we're not going to let Kamala just step in and be the nominee. We are going to have an open primary, and Kamala, if she wants to be the nominee, she has to compete against all these other people, one of which probably, I believe, would have been Miss Michelle Obama. I think she would have gotten into that primary had it been made available, and she would have raised all the money that Joe Biden had raised, plus a whole lot more had it been Michelle Obama. And I think she would have had a better chance of competing against Donald Trump than Kamala Harris did against Donald Trump. That's what I believe to be true. Now, if they would have had the open primary, you would have had Obama, Michelle. You probably would have had Shapiro from Pennsylvania. You would have had Whitmer from Michigan, and you would have had Newsom, or as Trump calls him, New Scum, from California. All of them are very popular. All of them are well established in the Democratic Party. And I've said this like 10 times over the last month. Had they had an open primary with all of those people, Kamala Harris would have come in last place. She would have not beaten any of them. Now, why do I say that? Well, a couple of reasons. First of all, we saw what Kamala did in the actual election. Secondly, you heard Kamala during all the interviews that she did during this shortened campaign season that she had. There's not much substance to this woman. There's just not a lot of substance to her. Whether you are a fan of hers or not, there's not a lot of substance to this woman. She repeats the same things over and over again. We don't really know who she is as a person. We have no idea what her personality is. I don't think she actually even has one. And if you listen to the things that Candace Owens has been reporting about Kamala's background and her family and her upbringing, then it might make a little bit more sense why Kamala has no personality. Go watch those videos on YouTube of what Candace has been doing. Each of those videos Candace has been putting out for the last month got like 1 million views a piece, while at the same time Candace is completely, demonetized on YouTube. So she's missed out on several thousands of dollars simply because the videos are demonetized on YouTube. But she kept going. So respect to Candace Owens for that, whether you like her or not. And the other thing about Kamala is that in 2020, for the 2020 campaign, if you remember, you probably don't because it happened so quickly that most people never even noticed it. Kamala Harris put herself up as a candidate for the Democratic ticket in 2020. And y'all know how these primaries go. When the primary first starts, or before the primary season really happens, everybody who's throwing their hat in the ring, they all jump in, right? So you remember Trump back in 2015, and he decided he was going to run for president, and everyone was all surprised. Like, does this guy really have a chance? And the first debate that he did, I don't know if you can call it a debate, because there's like 15 people on the stage. With Trump, it was like Ted Cruz, you had Jeb Bush, you had Marco Rubio, you had all these people whose names we don't even remember. And Trump, they're all on the stage together. So in that cycle, they do that on the Republican side, they do it on the Democrat side. So on the Democrat side, Kamala was part of that. She wanted to run for president in 2020. She was going to run against Joe Biden in 2020, if y'all remember this. And her campaign was so trash, so weak, and so poorly executed, and her polling numbers, her internal polling numbers were so bad that Kamala dropped out of the 2020 race before they even started voting, before they started casting votes just for the Democratic nominee. She dropped out of the race because her campaign was so trash and nobody liked her. All right, if y'all remember, some of you don't even know about this. Kamala appeared on the Breakfast Club during that time when she was still putting herself up as I'm going to run for the Democratic nomination. And she did an interview on the Breakfast Club. Go watch that video of Kamala on the Breakfast Club back in it might have been in 2019 or early 2020. And you could just read the comments. All right, people were just trashing her. Nobody liked Kamala Harris. And she was running as a black woman. I ain't even got to beat the dead horse of the black part anymore, but Kamala Harris is not black. Again, Candace Owens has covered that. I already knew it from before Candace even got into it. Kamala Harris is not black. Anyway, even though she was running as a black woman and was appearing on a influential to black people platform, being the Breakfast Club. I think the Breakfast Club has, I don't know if they ever even had credibility, but I don't like some of the stuff that they do. But I cannot ignore the fact that they have a lot of eyeballs and influence. Even on that platform, she was not welcome. Even on that platform, she was looking bad. Now, you would think a platform that leans heavily towards the left and is supportive of the Democratic candidate. And if you watch the Breakfast Club, you notice that every time a person who is conservative appears on the show, they bring another person on as a guest host to basically be the attack dog of that person. So they did it with Byron Donalds. They did it with Vivek Ramaswamy. They did it with Larry Elder. They did it with Eric Adams. They did it with Lara Trump. Every conservative who appears on the Breakfast Club is always bringing another person to be a guest host, usually a black female. I don't know why, but it's always a black female. And that female just goes on the attack against the guests. And you got like Charlamagne sitting over here. Envious. So it's like if I'm the guest, right? Charlamagne's sitting over here to my right. DJ Envy is sitting in front of me. And then the guest host, who usually doesn't even start off talking, they're just there. They're sitting over here to my left. So while I'm looking at these two guys talking to them as we warm up the conversation, out of nowhere, this person just starts attack dogging me. So it's like you're walking this way and the dog just comes and start biting on your legs. That's the attack dog they usually have sitting over there. Angela Rye they had once, and a couple other people whose names I don't even know. But it's always a black female, and she's always very combative with the conservative guests. They never do this with the liberal guests. They never do it, only with the conservatives. So anyway, this is one of the challenges I have with the Breakfast Club. It makes for good, entertaining conversation because if you're going to get into politics, you have to be able to deal with that because people are going to do it to you from all angles. And they all dealt with it very well. Elder, Vivek, who else was on there? Byron Donalds, Lara Trump, and it was one other person whose name I just said, but I forgot. But anyway, when Kamala appeared on the Breakfast Club, they were friendly to her somewhat. They were asking her questions about her track record and as such because she has a background as a prosecutor, which is always a little bit problematic with the black community because there are a lot of black people in America, whether they are accurate or not, tend to not trust anyone who's in the enforcement of the law aspect. So being a prosecutor doesn't mean you're against black people. It just means you're prosecuting criminals. If you did actual crime, then you should get prosecuted, whether you're black or white. That's how I look at it logically. But this worked against Kamala because of her background as a prosecutor, and a lot of people were trashing her. I'm saying all that to say that she was doing so poorly in her 2020 campaign to be the Democratic nominee that she dropped out. But not before a couple of things happened. She did some debates where when the crowd started to narrow, because at first it starts with like 15, 20 people who all think they have a chance. But the way these things work, if y'all don't know, and I'm being just very high level, you have to be polling at a certain amount. You got to have at least a certain amount of support from the general public to even stay in the race. If you don't have like 1% or 2% or 5%, or you haven't raised this much money, you don't have this many secured delegates, you must drop out of the race. So Kamala Harris had enough of that she stayed in to where the crowd started to narrow. And there were two things that happened. First of all, she and Tulsi Gabbard were both going to run for this is for the Democratic nomination. And it's interesting because Tulsi Gabbard is now on the Trump side. She's supporting Trump. And Tulsi Gabbard is a female. She had been in the armed forces, and they were the two women who were still remaining in the running for the Democratic ticket. And there's a clip. You can find this on social media. Tulsi Gabbard on YouTube, the full clip. Tulsi Gabbard basically set flames to Kamala Harris's campaign with like a 2-minute clip. And y'all know that the way that these debate things work, this is all about getting those gotcha moments on people, just like Trump did with Hillary when he said, "You be in jail." That killed Hillary's whole campaign. When he said that, it just set the whole thing, it set her whole campaign on fire in a negative way. So this is what Tulsi Gabbard, she basically took Kamala's track record and held it against her, and Kamala couldn't really say anything back because Tulsi is just she's better at argumentation than Kamala was. That's the first thing that happened. The other thing that happened, I don't know what order these happened in, just two things I want to bring up. That when Joe Biden was facing off with Kamala, this is when they're both trying to get the Democratic nomination. This is before Joe won and before Kamala dropped out. She said to Joe Biden, "You argued against the busing of students back in the days, and me," and she said, no, this is Kamala, "me as a black student, that really bothered me, that really hurt me." And Kamala tried to evoke emotion here. Like, it hurt a lot of black people that you, Joe Biden, were against busing black students into schools with white students. And I was one of those little black students who was really bothered by that. And this is all made up, but this is what she said. And she used it to frame Joe Biden as a racist. That's what she did. She was framing Joe Biden as this racist white man. And then when she dropped out of the campaign, then she goes and works for Joe Biden. Now, I'm telling you all that not to say that Kamala thought, I don't think Kamala ever thought Joe Biden was racist. I think this is all political theater. That's what it is, just political theater. But I'm bringing this all up to say all of you should never be fooled by the way these people present themselves, because they're all playing games just to get your votes, especially the career politicians like Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, and people like Kamala Harris. Now, Trump is a little bit different because he's not a career politician, but those people are career politicians. And here's the reason why that matters. The reason why it matters, what political or career politicians say, is because if they lose their positions in politics, they have no plan B. They have nowhere else to go. If Joe Biden wasn't in politics, what would he be doing for a living? All right, nothing, because he hasn't done anything else. That's all he's done his whole life. If Kamala Harris was not in politics, what would she be doing? All right, nothing. All right, she hasn't done anything else. Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton lost in 2016. What's she been doing since? Appearing on The View, all right, writing books. All right, she doesn't do anything. All right. She has nothing else. She has no other skills. And I'm saying that to say, not even to diss them. I mean, politician is a career. All right. There's money to be made being a politician in America these days. Not supposed to be that way. Different conversation for a different day, but there is money to be made. It is a respectable, I'm being generous, respectable career. The thing is, someone who spends their entire life there, you have to trust, you have to question, are they really telling you what they believe, or are they just saying what they have to say so they can keep their jobs? And my argument is that if someone's in politics their entire lives, they will say whatever they got to say to keep their jobs, because they don't have anything else to do. Donald Trump has other things he could do if he wasn't in politics. Vivek Ramaswamy ran a business. That's how he got his money. He has other things that he could do. I don't know what the hell Kamala Harris is going to do now that I think her first of all, her political ascension is definitely over. But her political career, we'll see where she ends up. We'll see. So let's move on to the 2020 election. Joe Biden versus Donald Trump, where technically in the history books will say that Joe Biden beat Donald Trump in the 2020 election. Let's talk about it. What everyone's been talking about over the last 24 to 36 hours is that Joe Biden got, allegedly, this is the line that keeps being repeated, he got 81 million votes in the 2020 election. Technically, the history book says that's how many votes he got, 81 million. But it's looking like, we don't have the full numbers yet, it's looking like Kamala Harris dropped down to about 65, 66 million. Maybe she'll get up to 70 million votes. Once they count the full popular vote, Kamala might end up with about 70 million votes. So the question that people have been asking is what happened to those 10 to 15 million voters who voted Democrat in the 2020 election, as opposed to them not appearing in the 2024 election? Well, several things happened. Let's talk about it. And all right, let's start here. When you go back past the last, 4 or 5 elections, the one before Obama, who was that guy? John Kerry. So you got Kerry, you got Obama, the second time. So Kerry 04, Obama 2008, Obama 2012, Hillary in 2016. All of them got about 65 million votes. So Kerry lost, Obama won twice, and Hillary lost. But they all got about the same number of votes, about 65 million popular votes in each election. And Joe Biden all of a sudden jumps up to 81 million. He got 15 million more votes than anyone had gotten before that. And then Kamala, she drops back down to about the mid 60s in millions of votes. And people are like, well, and what I'm seeing on social media, on X specifically, I'm seeing a lot of people saying, well, how is it possible? These are people who are supporters of Kamala Harris, people who are supporters of the left. They're like, how is it possible that Hillary Clinton got all those votes? Not Hillary, excuse me. Joe Biden got all those votes, but they don't exist now. And they're like, and they're trying to plant these seeds. They're trying to drop these little tea leaves. Well, we're not saying that it's some type of scam here, but maybe they need to look into this. Maybe the people who count the votes need to look into this and not maybe concede the election so far. Maybe Kamala's votes aren't being all counted, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. My response to that, I'm going to give you the short version, then give you the long version. Here's my short response. Bullshit. That's my short response. Now I'm going to give you the long response. The long response to the disparity between the 2020 numbers for Joe Biden and the 2024 numbers for Kamala, at least what we project the numbers to be, she's going to be about 10 million short of what Joe Biden did, is how did Joe Biden get those votes? All right, now I got to be careful what I say here before I get kicked off another platform. How did Joe Biden get those votes? Now, here's the first question, because I see people saying this on social media, and they're trying to kind of trap people with this language. And people are saying, do you believe that, based on the numbers, that the 2020 election was stolen? So, Dre, do you believe the 2020 election was stolen? My answer is no. And here's why I'm going to say no. Because if you accuse somebody of stealing something, you have to prove it. And this is on the Trump side of things. And Donald Trump, he had this whole thing. It was called Stop the Steal, right? When January 6th, y'all don't know about January 6th, or y'all know about it, but what actually happened that day is Donald Trump gave a speech. And the whole theme of the speech was Stop the Steal, because he believed the election had been stolen from him. Donald Trump is a master persuader. Using that language got a lot of people riled up and excited. And that's why everybody came to DC on January 6th. As far as salesmanship, it was a great idea. Now, if Donald Trump was to say to me, Dre, do you believe the 2020 election was stolen from me? I would say, Mr. President, if you claim somebody stole something, you got to prove it. All right, that's what I would say to him. You got to prove it. If you say I stole something from you, you got to prove that I stole it. If you can't prove it, then you can't keep saying that I stole something. So the conservative MAGA side, let's just say the MAGA team, They tried to prove that the 2020 election had been stolen. They went to court and they tried a whole bunch of stuff. They filed a whole bunch of cases and went in front of a bunch of judges trying to get it shown that it had been stolen from them. They were unable to prove it. Now, let me be clear. Just because you can't prove that somebody stole something does not necessarily mean that they didn't steal it. But you have to prove it. The burden of proof is on the accuser. So if you accuse someone of something, at least in the United States of America, I don't know where all of you lives or where everybody here is from. There are countries in the world where if you get accused, the burden of proof is on you to prove that you're not wrong. And there are many countries in the world, you don't have the freedoms that we have here. There are countries in the world where I couldn't even be talking about this the way that I'm talking about it, trashing either political party. They become kicked down my door just for saying this stuff. In America, you can get away with this. So all of you who live in America, be thankful that you're here. But anyway, if you say that somebody stole something, the burden of proof is on you to prove that they stole it. And if you can't prove it, then we got to leave it at that. Doesn't mean it didn't happen, but it's not what you know, is what you can prove. So I believe that Donald Trump will take it to his grave that the 2020 election was stolen from him. And here's what I'll say. Here's what I'll say about the 2020 election. I believe that the way that the 2020 election was executed was highly questionable at best. Highly questionable the way that it was done. Because first of all, you had the virus going on at that time. And because of the virus, a lot of people did not vote in person, but they were going to vote. So we know what the numbers are for voting. We know that in the United States of America, about a little bit less than half of the population actually votes. So if Kamala, let's say with Clinton, Kamala, even Obama, you got about 65 million on both sides. So that takes us to about 130 million people vote. So that's a little bit less than half of the entire population of the country, and our population is growing. A little bit less than half of everybody votes. The Democrats and Republicans usually get about the same number of votes. All right, and we're talking a couple million difference each time. So the reason why this is questionable is because of this. In the 2020 election cycle, because people weren't voting in person, there was a whole bunch of mail-in ballots. Now, as soon as you take it from people got to show up and actually do something, like they did in 2024 and before that in 2016, to where you can do it from home, well, you introduce the incentive for people to do some nonsense. That's the whole point. It introduces the incentive. Now, that doesn't mean it actually happened, but it does mean it could happen because human beings respond to incentives. So if you work for the Democratic Party and somebody calls you and pays you and says, hey, I just need you to go make this happen, is it a possibility that happened? Absolutely it is. Again, it doesn't prove it, but is it possible? Absolutely it is. Now, what did happen during the 2020 election, first of all, is that the Democratic side was placing drop boxes, and a drop box is simply a temporary mailbox that is set up to receive mail-in ballots. They were putting those in places that they were not supposed to put them, in ways that are not in line with the law. And they were being challenged by the Republican side. The problem is the ballots had already been received. So it's not like they could unreceive the ballots, and they couldn't unmix the ones that were sent legitimately from the ones who weren't. That is something that did actually happen. That's one thing. Another thing that happened is that they were sending out people to canvass. The Democratic Party did this, and they did it better than the Republicans did. Just to be objectively true, they did it better than the Republicans. Canvassing simply means you hire a person. So let's say I hire you, and I say, go to this neighborhood. And I want you to go into apartment complexes. I want you to go into projects. I want you to knock on people's doors and tell them who you are. Tell them that you're there to help them get registered to vote. You go in their house, sit down with them, help them register to vote. Or if they're not registered, or if they are registered, help them fill out the ballot. And then you get all those ballots, all 300 ballots from that apartment complex, and you drop them in the drop box. That happened during the 2020 election. And again, it's not like the Republicans couldn't do it. It's just the Democrats did it better. Did that have something to do with the outcome of that election? I believe absolutely that it did. That's what I believe happened in 2020. This is how you can explain how Joe Biden got 15 million more votes than any other Democrat before or since him. Not because Joe Biden is some super popular guy. It's because you introduced the incentive for shenanigans, because people didn't have to take any type of, what's the word I'm looking for here? Initiative in order to vote. You didn't have to take initiative to vote in 2020. You just waited for the ballot to come to your house, or somebody to come knock on your door. They helped you fill out the damn ballot and took it from you. You never even had to leave the house. You didn't have to get dressed, and you could go vote. See, in 2024, you had to go back to actually voting. All right, 2020, even if it was early voting, you still had to go vote. If you voted on the day of the election, you had to go somewhere and actually do it. See, they took away that incentive to do the things by mail, the shenanigans by mail. All of a sudden, the Democrats lost 15,000 votes. Now, let's ask ourselves a question. Take away those 15,000 votes for Joe Biden in 2020. Does he win the election? No, he doesn't win. So all that said, it is fair to say, I would not argue with you if you said, you would have to explain why you're saying it, but I wouldn't argue with you if you just said Donald Trump won 3 elections in a row. I wouldn't argue with it. Now, just explain why. He won 3 elections in a row. He beat Hillary, he beat Kamala, and when it comes to 2020, there was a whole lot of shenanigans happened on the Democratic side. Now, Donald Trump's response to it was he called it Stop the Steal. It was influential, got a whole bunch of people around him. It led to the January 6th thing, which was not an insurrection. Let me be on the record again. That was not an insurrection. You cannot overthrow the government with 500 people, if it was even that much, and no guns and no tanks, no weapons. You can't overthrow the United States government with that. All right, that was not an insurrection. It was a speech that was given. There was a protest, both legal. There were some people as part of the protest who did things they shouldn't have did, like trespassing and being violent, and they got punished for it. However, the punishments that got given out for the people on January 6th were excessive. And I believe that when Trump gets in, he is going to pardon those people, or if he's not even thinking about it, he should. I believe that he should pardon the people who got sentences from the January 6th situation, because their sentences were exorbitant. And that was all based on the fact that the government and the media framed January 6th and the people who protested on January 6th as if this was some type of overthrow of the government, which influenced the courts to give harsher and stiffer sentences to the people who were involved. That's the problem that I have with that. And you juxtapose that with the BLM protests, some of which became riots in just less than a year earlier, about 6 months earlier, right? The BLM protests in the summer of 2020. Let me ask you this question. All right, how many of those people got harsh sentences for the things that they did? And as a matter of fact, Miss Kamala Harris, who was what was she doing at that time? At 2020, she was already picked as the vice president nominee, but she didn't actually have the position yet. But she was working with Joe Biden as the vice president. They were on the campaign trail, right? Kamala Harris publicly said, I want to help bail people out of jail who have gotten arrested during the BLM riots. So she was bailing people out of jail who got arrested for actually doing stuff during the BLM riots. But during the January 6th thing, those people got super harsh sentences simply because they were allegedly threatening democracy and trying to overthrow the government. And they got very harsh sentences. Some of those people are still sitting in jail right now. And I believe, and again, Donald Trump asked me, Dre, what do you think I should do with the people who are still in jail because of January 6th? I say, let them out. I got a pause connection on Instagram. If Donald Trump asked me, Dre, what should I do with the people still locked up from January 6th? I'll say, let them out. Pardon all of them and let them out. And the government went so hard to find these people. Do y'all know how they did the investigation on January 6th? Y'all know about this? So again, we're going to juxtapose this. Think about the BLM protests / riots in 2020. All right. And they were both the same thing. January 6th, there were people protesting and there were people who rioted. In BLM summer of 2020, there were people who protested and people who rioted. Was there any deep investigation to find the people who did stuff during the BLM riots? Was there anyone who went and tried to find out and search forensic evidence to find the people who burned down police precincts in the summer of 2020, or burned down a local Wendy's, or were breaking windows, or were threatening white people, or threatening anyone who wasn't with them in the summer of 2020? There was none of that. January 6th. Now, one thing I can understand with January 6th is that it happened on government property, so it's easier to get the surveillance and all of that stuff. But what happened on January 6th, if y'all don't know this, and a lot of people don't know this, is that the government started releasing all the surveillance footage from around the area of the Capitol. And they have a ton of it. So that part I understand. They have much more surveillance there than you got just randomly in the hood next to a damn Wendy's or a gas station. But they released all the surveillance footage and they just put it out to the citizens and said, if any of you can identify anybody that you see on camera in any of these photos or any of these videos, contact us. And we, the FBI, are going to go find that person and hold them accountable. That's what they did in January 6th. That's how all those people got locked up. Because a lot of people did stuff on January 6th and went home. They didn't do anything. Maybe they just went and they went to the speech, the Stop the Steal speech. They marched to the Capitol. All of this is completely legal. Peaceful protest is legal in America. It's in the Constitution. And they went home. What the FBI did, and I know a lot of you don't know this, the FBI went and visited every single person that they could identify from that footage on January 6th. Every single person. There are people who I know who were in D.C. on January 6th to the speech, marched, didn't do anything wrong, didn't trespass, didn't do anything violent, went home. They got visited by the FBI. The FBI didn't do anything. They didn't arrest them. They just visited them just to let them know. And that's what FBI does is an intimidation tactic, just to let you know, like, hey, here are us. We know who you are, and we know where you live. They did that to intimidate everybody who went to January 6th. That's what they did. And then they took the tips, because this is what happened. Because when that happened, January 6th, the quote unquote insurrection, right? So we already got half the country who doesn't like Trump. So half the country doesn't like Trump. And then you got a bunch of people who are allegedly Republicans and there's a lot of Republicans who don't like Trump. They said, well, hey, I am Republican, but I can't support Trump because of January 6th, because of insurrection. So now you got even more people who don't like Trump and don't like anyone who does like Trump. All of those people got mobilized to help us identify every single person you see on video or in these photos from January 6th. We're going to go find these people and hold them accountable. And they had, let's say, 60% of the country trying to witch hunt all these people who went to support Donald Trump on January 6, 2021. That all happened. This is all a result of the 2020 election, which, again, I can't say it was stolen because nobody proved the steal, but was it questionable? Absolutely. 2020 election was highly questionable. And what we just saw 2 days ago from this election is actually even more evidence that 2020 was highly questionable. You go from 65 million every election, Kerry, Obama, Hillary, 81 million for Biden, and now you back down to 65 million again for Kamala. Explain that. Explain the 15 million votes. Where they come from? Now, some people say the 15 million votes are people who didn't exist. Do I think some of that happened? Yes, some of it. I think a good amount of the 15 million that Joe Biden got were people who had no inclination and had no initiative to go do anything as far as voting. They were not going to leave their houses and actually get up off their asses and go anywhere to vote, even if it was across the street. But because of the way that the setup was for 2020, you could send your workers to go to their houses and get the vote from them without them having to do anything, just so you can canvass more votes for the person you're working for. That's what I believe the majority of those 15 million was, that the Democrats just had a whole bunch of people working for them on the ground, and that's how they did it. Those boots on the ground did it. They just did it better than the Republicans did. That's it. And here's another reason why that's possible. If you look at the electoral maps and if you pay attention to this stuff, in every state, most of the Democratic voters are situated in these compact areas, like metropolitan areas, cities. That's where all the Democrat voters are. You look at any state's electoral map, anywhere you see, almost every state in America, you look at the electoral map, is all red. The whole state is all red, and only blue area. You'll see like 3 or 4 or 2 or 3 blue areas in every state. That's where the big cities are. If you had the names of the cities on the maps, you would see it. Look at the map of Pennsylvania, which is this big swing state, right? And the map of Pennsylvania, you see 3 blue areas. The whole rest of the map is red. The 3 blue areas, and I'm from Pennsylvania, are Philadelphia, my hometown city, Pittsburgh, and that's another big city, and State College, which is where Penn State is at. Those are 3 blue areas. The whole rest of the damn map is red. And every state's like that. New York State, same thing. You got New York City is super red. Blue, excuse me. Then you might have a couple other cities, maybe like Syracuse. Everything else in the state is red. The point is, I'm bringing all that up to say this, that the Democrats were able to do what they did in 2020 because it's much easier to send some workers into an area where everybody that they want to influence is concentrated very close together, as opposed to the Republicans doing it. For the Republicans to do it, you got to go to the whole state, and it's all spread out. All your voters are all spread out. So it would be harder for the Republicans to do it. So this is the reason why, again, 2020 was just the perfect chemistry, let's say, for lack of a better term, for them to do what they did. Had there been no virus in 2020, we wouldn't be talking about Donald Trump right now, because he would have won 2020, and we'd be talking about whoever would have come up would have been 2 different people, because Biden never would have won. Therefore, we never would have had Kamala. Most of us never would know who she is. And it'd be 2 new candidates right now. Instead, that whole thing got pushed back 4 years. So now we're going to be 2 new candidates in the 2028 election. So 2020, all right, everybody heard what I said here. This was questionable at best, and I'm being generous by calling it questionable. Do I think it was stolen? You got to prove it. All right, so any of you thinks it was stolen, you got to prove it. You can't accuse somebody of something in the United States of America without proof, and we had to accept it. You got to prove it. The burden of proof is on you. Moving on to next point. It doesn't even matter what number. I'm giving you a bunch of points here. They're worded in my notes. Democratic mistakes. All right, people got tired of voting against Trump. All right, that is old. It's over. They used it twice. It's over. And I think the second time, again, I just explained to you why the second one might not even been that good. And the first one didn't even work. y'all notice that? So Trump's run 3 elections. The first one was vote against Trump. Vote for Hillary because you don't like Trump. That failed. He won. The next one was vote against Trump. Vote for Joe Biden, who was worse than Hillary, a worse quality candidate than Hillary. Vote for him because you don't like Trump. All right, that quote unquote worked. I just gave you a very long explanation for why that's questionable, but it quote unquote worked. History books will say that it worked. Now they try to do it the third time. All right, that's enough. That's enough. All right, as they say, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. All right, now they try to do the same thing 3 times in a row. It's like the boy who cried wolf. All right, we get it. We don't like Trump. You got a certain number of people who are going to vote against Trump, but goddamn, y'all got to come with something better than that. Did y'all have anything else? On top of the fact that they had lower quality candidates each time. Obama was better than Hillary. Hillary was better than Biden. And Biden was better than Kamala. Kamala was the worst quality candidate the Democrats have sent to nominations since John Kerry. 20 years, this is the worst candidate the Democrats have had. If you are a Democrat, please tell me I got this wrong. Tell me who Kamala was better than between Obama, Hillary, and Biden. Who's she better than? First of all, she's damn sure better than Obama. Obama is like the picture perfect 3D printer version of a presidential candidate. Again, whether you like his policies or not, the way he presented himself, the way he carries himself, the way he talks, his stature, all of that, perfect candidate. Obama was perfect. So I know nobody thinks she was better than Obama. Maybe you could argue Clinton. I don't think so. Clinton had the pedigree, was married to a president. And you can't say Biden. Joe Biden beat her. She tried to beat Joe Biden in the primary. He won. So she can't be better than Biden. She was working for Joe Biden. So she can't be better than him. So the only one you could possibly say is Hillary Clinton. And Hillary Clinton actually had a career politically that is a stronger resume than Kamala Harris's. So I don't know how you can say it. I don't think anybody does. I don't think anybody believes that. Kamala Harris was the worst candidate the Democrats have put forth. And I think Kerry, at least he has a resume. Even Al Gore had a resume. He was coming off of being with Clinton for 8 years. So Kamala Harris is the worst candidate the Democrats have sent to the ballot box in the entire century. She's the worst candidate the Democrats have had since I think the last bad candidate was 1988. I don't even remember who that was. Was it Dukakis against Bush? I think Kamala Harris is the worst candidate the Democrats have had in all century. So did that have something to do with it? I think so. Kamala Harris was trash. She was just not a good candidate. And their whole argument was not, hey, look how good our candidate is. Their argument was vote against Trump. And it worked enough that they got a whole bunch of people galvanized to vote against Trump. 3 times in a row, they got a bunch of people to vote against Trump. I think some people did actually like Hillary Clinton. I do believe that. I don't believe many people liked Joe Biden, and I don't believe anybody liked Kamala Harris. The good news with Kamala Harris, or allegedly good news, was that you could at least play the identity politics game. You could at least say she's a female and she's a person of color. No, she's not black. She is a person of color. We can agree she's a person of color. I'll give you that much. But this vote against Trump thing didn't work anymore. People got tired of it. And now good news is you can only be president twice in America. So now we don't have to deal with this again. At least the people on the Democratic side, you don't have to deal with it again. And Trump's old anyway. I don't think he should even try to get another term, even if he was eligible to do so. I think this is enough. So we'll get 2 fresh new candidates in the next round. Now, here's where we're going to spend some more time. The ongoing cognitive dissonance. I got a pause connection on Instagram. The ongoing cognitive dissonance of the Democratic Party, Democratic supporters, leftists, liberals, Kamala supporters, Trump haters, whatever you want to call these people. All right, the people on that side. All right, the people who hate Donald Trump were supporters of Kamala Harris, or at least you claim that you are a supporter of Kamala Harris. The ongoing cognitive dissonance. Those of you who don't know what cognitive dissonance is, I'm going to give you my version of what it is just to explain. Cognitive dissonance is when you expect something to happen one way, it happens another way, and instead of admitting that maybe I miscalculated, maybe I don't know what I thought I knew, maybe I had the wrong expectation, maybe I messed up, maybe my prediction wasn't as accurate as I thought it would be. Instead of saying that, which would be objective and holding yourself accountable, cognitive dissonance is when you say, oh, well, the only reason things didn't go the way I thought they would is because those people over there, they're just too dumb. They're too stupid. They don't make sense. They don't understand. They're the ones messing up. Let me give you an example. I'm a salesperson. I've been in the sales business for my entire professional career. Ever since I've been out of college, actually before college, I've always been in sales. And when I say sales, I mean selling anything, whether I'm selling coaching, speaking gigs, books, courses, anything. All right, I'm in the sales world. And when you're in sales, one of the principles of sales is that you never blame the prospect. One of the principles of sales is that you never blame the prospect. So you sit down with the prospect for 3 hours and you're trying to close them on a sale, and you agreed on the terms, you agreed on the prices, you got over every objection, they end up not buying. You do not blame the prospect. Now, what does that have to do with what we're talking about here today? The most egregious cognitive dissonance I've seen on social media over the last 36 hours has been a bunch of anti-Trump people, because they're not really Harris supporters, anti-Trump people experiencing a ton of cognitive dissonance. Instead of just saying, you know what, maybe Kamala wasn't that good of a candidate. Maybe we can't keep doing this anti-Trump thing, and we got to actually bring some substance to a campaign next time. Maybe Kamala's lack of answers to every question doomed her campaign. Maybe us trying to push Kamala as a black woman and black people seeing that she wasn't black and pushing back, maybe that has something to do with the failure of this campaign. Maybe Donald Trump actually has people on his side because he's talking about things he actually wants to do for them, and we just keep focusing on vibes and don't vote for Trump because of all these negative things, and he has felony convictions, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe people have grown weary of listening to the mainstream media keep reporting negative things about Trump, and they are desensitized to it, and they no longer listen to the mainstream media. So the more things we push through the mainstream media, the more it's falling on deaf ears. Maybe, just maybe, we might need to try a different approach. But see, that would be too logical and too objective for the anti-Trumpers. What they're doing instead is they're blaming the prospect. So blaming the prospect would be like, I just gave you the example. I sit down with a prospect for 3 hours trying to sell my product. I'm trying to sell him a car. I'm trying to sell him coaching. I'm trying to sell him an iPod, whatever. He doesn't buy. Blaming the prospect would be me going out to my sales manager and saying, well, he didn't buy because he's too indecisive. He is too tight with his money. He needs permission from his wife. He just is dancing around the subject. He can't stay focused when I'm asking him simple questions. He is just scared to part with his money. And he's just a complete dummy and an idiot. And he clearly doesn't want to change his life. And that's why he didn't buy. See, that's blaming the prospect. This is what anti-Trumpers are doing right now. They're in the midst of doing this right now. Some of you are listening to me. You're guilty of it right now. That's what they're doing. They're blaming the prospect. All right, this is the reason why we didn't win. All right, the reason why we didn't win is because everybody in America is just too racist. America is just too racist. That's the reason why we're not winning. Right. That's the reason why you're not winning. America is just super racist. That's the reason why it's not working. Or here's another one. Oh, people voted, instead of voting for the greater good, you voted just for yourself and for your own self-interest. Interesting. Oh, people didn't vote for Kamala because America just hates women. That must be it. Hillary lost to Trump and Kamala lost to Trump. That's enough evidence that America just hates women. That explains everything. Or maybe it's not that. Oh, maybe people simply are desensitized to the fact that a guy he is a assaulter. He has 34 felony convictions. He has a bunch of bankruptcies. What's the other things they say about Trump? He hates illegals. He hates people of color. He only works for the rich white guys. He only going to work for his billionaire friends. That's Kamala kept saying that over and over again. Oh, that's the reason why we lost. That's the reason why Kamala lost. All right, see, this is blaming the prospect. No true professional blames the prospect. As they say, no good craftsman ever blames his tools. And this is what we call cognitive dissonance. And this is, I believe, that sometimes people experience cognitive dissonance in the heat of the moment. Like if I just got off a sales conversation with somebody and I end up not closing the sale, I might be annoyed for 5 minutes with them because of something that I believe is their flaw in the process. But after that 5 minutes, I got to get over that and I got to bring it back to the person in the mirror and say, okay, what did I not do that led to that situation not going the way I wanted it to go? Eventually, I got to take ownership of the situation. Because if I don't take ownership of the situation, that means I have no power to do anything about it. And this is the problem. This is the problem that people have. This is a general human problem. I'm just using the Kamala Harris situation as a frame for this, but this is a general human problem. Most human beings, when things don't go their way, they look for someone or something to blame rather than taking ownership of the situation. And the Kamala Harris supporters, or let me stop saying Kamala Harris supporters. She doesn't have any supporters. The Trump haters, they're the ones who they don't have this ownership mentality or personal accountability mentality any more than the average person does. Most people think like this. When things don't go their way, they look for someone or something to blame instead of saying, I'm going to take ownership of this. Let me do something about it. And here's the challenge with taking ownership of a situation is that you may not know what to do because Kamala just lost 2 days ago. So if you're a staunch Democrat or a Kamala supporter or a Trump hater or whatever you want to call yourself, and you're mad that Kamala lost, you might still be dealing with the emotional shock of the situation occurring the way that it occurred. And I'll answer all questions and comments at the end, by the way, those of you who are posting anything. You may be still dealing with the emotional shock of it, so maybe you haven't gotten to this point yet. Here's my suggestion to you, and this is for all of you, regardless of how you feel politically, whether you even care, is that the next time something doesn't go the way that you want it to go, you get 5 minutes to blame everything and everyone outside of yourself. You get 5 minutes. That's the 5-minute rule. You get 5 minutes to do that, to bitch, moan, and complain about them. Then after 5 minutes, you got to bring back to the person in the mirror and say, okay, what did I do that led to this? What did I not do? What did I not know? What did I not say? What did I miss? What did I pretend to not notice? I got a pause connection on Instagram. What did I miss? What did I pretend to not notice? And what can I do differently next time so that this doesn't happen again? See, that's taking ownership. And here's the thing. You may not have answers to any of those questions initially. You might not be able to answer a single one of them. Because at first you don't know what you missed. Because if you knew you missed it, you probably wouldn't have missed it, right? So this is what they call debriefing. In the military, they call this a debrief. After the situation's over, you sit down with everyone who was involved and you look at everything that you did and didn't do and ask yourself, could we have made a better or different decision based on what we knew then and based on what we know now? There's a book called Principles by Ray Dalio. If you haven't read that book, you should read it. And Ray Dalio is not a military guy nor a political guy, but he's a investor. He's a very successful, well-known, successful investor. In his book, Principles, he talks about this and how in his company, they always do kind of he uses a different term, but basically debriefing every single thing they do in the business to figure out how can we make better decisions? How can we have a better decision-making process? And you don't have to be a financial investor or a military person or a political person to read the book. I'm none of those three, at least I'm not a full-time financial investor. But reading that book, the principles in the book, again, principles don't change, folks. So the principles that work over here because they're the same principles. Principles in the military can apply to your everyday life. Principles in finance can apply to your everyday life. And this is about looking at yourself instead of looking outside. Leaders, ladies and gentlemen, look in the mirror, whereas followers look out the window. Out the window is everybody out there. Leaders, in the mirror, is looking at yourself. What do I need to do? What do I need to change? So let's talk about these cognitive dissonance points. Let's just address them one at a time. First of all, America is still racist. That's the reason Kamala didn't win. All right, that's some bullshit. Let me tell you why that's bullshit. First of all, Kamala Harris is cosplaying being black. Do we even know if Kamala Harris is black? Her claim to blackness is that her father was from Jamaica. She's not claiming her mom was black. She's claiming because her mom's Indian. She's claiming that her father is Jamaican. Her father's still alive. Why has he not spoken up and just said, yes, here's who I am. Yes, that's my daughter. Yes, I'm from Jamaica. I was born in Jamaica. I'm Jamaican. That's where she gets her Jamaican blood. If he had just said that, then I would say, okay, Kamala's black. He ain't said nothing. He's still alive. He ain't black. I don't believe he's black. I don't believe she's black. And Candace Owens has done the investigative journalism on this. Y'all go listen to what she says. She did 30 videos on the subject. Kamala Harris, I believe, is Indian, Irish, and also Jewish. And again, Candace did surgery on this woman's background. And I know Kamala Harris's campaign knows about this. They got to know about everything being said about Kamala. And Candace was putting these videos out and they were getting like 1 million views in a day. So she knows about it. They know these things are being said. And this is why I believe it was when Kamala was on the Shannon Sharp podcast. What's the name of that show? Club Shay Shay. Shannon Sharp. Is that Kamala started to massage the story. And what she said was, I have family by blood and I got family by love. I think that's what she said, family by love. And this is like the people you grow up around, even though they're technically not your bloodline, you call them auntie or you call them uncle. I get what she's saying. And there are people who do that. I understand. But at the same time, when your own family ain't speaking up, like your real family, the people you're connected to by blood ain't speaking up and affirming that you are from where you say that you're from, that makes it questionable. And she was starting to massage the story because I think she was kind of just greasing the skids for if I win the election, then I'm going to have to explain this because people are going to keep asking. I'm going to get more scrutiny if I win. But she ended up losing. So now it becomes a moot point because she's gone. But the point that I'm making here is that they're saying that America is just continually racist. So this must be the reason. I'm looking over on Instagram. Nori, stop spamming my comments before I kick your ass out of here. the fuck you think you're talking to? So anyway, they're saying that America is racist. This is the reason why Kamala didn't win. America's just ongoing racist. This is the reason why she didn't win. I disagree. First of all, there could be many reasons why somebody didn't vote for Kamala Harris. It had nothing to do with being black, right, or whatever she's supposed to be, all right, person of color. All right, so could it be that Kamala just didn't give any answers, any straight answers to questions? Could it be that, all right, Nora, you got to go. You out here. All right, so could it be that Kamala didn't give any straight answers to any questions? Could it be that Kamala never won the primary in the first place? Could it be that maybe they just like Joe Biden, and since Joe Biden got kicked out, they got her out of there? Could it be any of these things? It could be a lot of different reasons why she didn't get voted for other than just racism, or that the people who voted for Trump, they voted for him because of racism. Donald Trump represents racism, so that's why you voted for him. Could it be that they just liked how the economy was or how life was or anything about Donald Trump other than anything that has to do with race? Could it possibly be that? Again, an objective person has the ability to ask themselves these questions. Another one was, and I saw several people say this. I'm not even going to single anybody out, but they said that a lot of people in America on election day had the option of voting for the greater good of everybody, but instead you decided to vote for your own personal self-interest. I find that one to be very, that's what we call grandstanding. If you don't know what grandstanding is, when someone's basically saying, well, you could have done this great thing. I didn't do it, but you could have did it. All right, that's grandstanding. And I think everybody acts in their own self-interest. Every human being on the planet acts in their own self-interest. All right, that's what people do. All right, everybody acts in their own self-interest. And the people who voted for Harris, there was something personally you could have gotten out of it, that at least you felt like you could have got out of it, even if it's just a vibe and energy. That's the reason why you did it. And same reason people voted for Trump. So making it like, oh, well, this is what we call the moral high ground logical fallacy. And One Race Alliance, who's commenting there, Nori got kicked out. So she's not going to see a comment. She got blocked. But anyway, I'm talking to people on Instagram. So this only for self thing. This is what we call the moral high ground fallacy. This is when you look at another person and say, I made this decision and you made that decision simply because I'm a better person than you are. I just have more morality in me than you have in you. That's why I made decision A and you made decision B. The only difference between my decision and your decision is that I'm just a better person than you. You made that decision because you're just a bad person. All right. And this is what people are doing. This is the framing that people are using. They're not saying it in so many words, but I've said it on social media, on X. I've been saying this since yesterday. This is the moral high ground play that people are making. Oh, the only reason that Trump won is because of half the people in America are racist and sexist, and they don't want to see a black person succeed. And if you're black, you got to be 10 times better and 10 times more qualified. And it's still a struggle for you. See, that's the moral high ground fallacy. It's bullshit. And I talked about this with the 2016 election. And this is how I got the red pill. Now, I'm going to be explaining the story over and over again. I did not vote for Donald Trump in 2016. I believed the mainstream media story that Donald Trump was racist and terrible, and that there was nothing positive that I would get from Donald Trump winning. It's not that I didn't think he was going to do anything negative to me, which he ended up not doing, but I didn't want him to win. So I voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016. And after he won the election, the first thing that I thought, and again, I gave myself the 5 minutes of cognitive dissonance, because that year I didn't really care. I wasn't really that invested at all. I got a pause connection. I wasn't really that invested at all into what happened in the election. I cared a lot more this year because I was paying a lot more attention. So I woke up the morning of November, I believe it was November 9th, 2016. As a matter of fact, that video is on YouTube. I gotta reshare that video on YouTube. And I said, Donald Trump won. Now what do we do? I remember recording that video that day because I wake up early in the morning and go to the gym. So I woke up that morning and I checked my phone to see who won the election because I didn't stay up to pay attention. I didn't care. And I saw that Donald Trump won. And I was shocked that he won in 2016 because I said, if everyone else heard the same message that I heard, that he's racist, misogynist, sexist, xenophobic. He doesn't like anyone other than white people. If that's the case, I understand if there's a pocket of people who are like that and they vote for him. I understand that in 2016. I would understand if 20% of the country is like that. Fine. But half the country, that didn't make sense to me. That didn't add up because I've been to almost every state in the United States. I know a lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds. I said, there's no way that half the people in the country think this way. It's impossible. So that morning, I was experiencing some cognitive dissonance, because cognitive dissonance was what I believed versus what reality was showing me. So I had to figure out how to reconcile that, because my experience of life was in conflict with the experience of him winning that election, and the experience of what I've been told by the mainstream media, what I had chosen to believe. Again, not what I knew, what I chose to believe. So I realized, okay, here's what I got to do. Let me go and find some of the people who are saying positive things about Donald Trump. Again, this is 2016 we're talking. Let me go find the people who are saying positive things about him, people who are taking the stuff that he says, because the mainstream media was flipping everything he said. Same thing they do now, right? Everything he says, they'll take a little piece out of it and they'll say, oh, Donald Trump said this. I'm going to be a dictator from day one. All right, is that what he said? Did he technically say those words? Yes, but it's out of context. When you take it out of context, it's a completely different story. So they would take things he said out of context and make it sound one way. And I was buying everything the mainstream media was telling me. This is the reason why I was the one living in a delusion. I came to realize, let me tell you what happened. So after that election, I'm talking like the very next day. And again, I got a video on YouTube where I talked about this, where I talked about what to do after Trump wins. And that I told everybody then the same thing I tell you now, is that what happens in the White House is not important as what happened in your house. But anyway, I went on social media and I started following some of the people who were saying positive things about Donald Trump. Some of the people who were talking about him in positive ways. I looked up, I'll give you a couple names if I can remember them. So I started listening a little bit more to Candace Owens, because she was conservative even back then. I started listening to Tommy Lauren, who was, I think she's still around. I don't see her stuff a lot anymore, but Tommy Lauren was out there. She was becoming very popular at that time. She was conservative. There was Scott Adams, the guy who wrote Dilbert, and he was doing like these breakdowns of what Trump was doing and why Trump was persuasive, not necessarily logically accurate, but he was persuasive. And Scott Adams was explaining why the persuasion was more important than the facts. And he was right. He ended up being right. And a few other people, I don't remember all their names, probably still follow them to this day. On social media, I follow a bunch of people who I don't even agree with, but I still follow them because I want to hear what they're talking about. And when Tommy's still on Fox, I know she still exists. I just don't see her stuff as much. And as I started listening to them, I realized, okay, there's a whole bunch of other reasons why people support Trump that have nothing to do with these negative labels that have been put on him. So this is the cognitive dissonance I want to call out in some of you who are experiencing the Trump derangement syndrome, as they say, for the last 10 years. There are people who support him and voted for him. And if you want to consider voting and support the same thing, I don't, but let's just say that you do. They have reasons that are outside of these things that you know about, such as, or that you think you know about, such as him hating illegals, or not illegals, but immigrants, hating other races other than white people, hating women. He's going to be a dictator. Good people on both sides, all these things that people are calling out. Understand that there are reasons that people voted for him that have nothing to do with that. And by the way, just to be clear, if there's some racist white guy living in suburban America who voted for Trump because the voter himself, he hates black people, or some misogynist who voted for Trump because he hates women, not Trump, but the voter hates women, or there's some American suburbanite who couldn't stand to see a woman of color be the leader of the United States of America, and they decide to vote for Trump based on that reason alone, let's be clear, that's their fucking right. Your vote, your choice. First Amendment, United States says you have free speech. And when you vote, you are speaking. You are letting the world know, not the world, but you're letting the candidates know who you prefer. And you have a right to vote for whatever reason that you want. So whether you're a single issue voter, as people say, or you're voting just because you like somebody's hair better than the other person's hair, or you're voting because you're a racist, or you're voting because you hate women, or you're voting because you hate black people, you have a right to vote for whatever damn reason you want. You don't have to give it, and you don't have to explain it. So I would see these videos, those man on the street videos people do these days, where you stop a random person in the street and ask them a question, and then you debate them and all this stuff. And they'll stop people and say, who are you voting for? The person answers the question. But they only show the videos that are interesting. But they do more videos than they put out. But they'll find somebody, who are you voting for? A person asks the question, they ask them, why are you voting for them? Then the person goes into trying to explain themselves. See, that's where they get you right there. When you start trying to explain yourself. Let me let all of you know something. And you can take this. I mean, the election's over. It won't be another 4 years before another one like this one. But you don't have to explain your preferences to any other person for any reason if you don't want to. you don't have to explain why. If someone would have stopped me on the street and said, who you voting for? And I already told you the answer, I'm voting for myself. I would have said that, I'm voting for myself. And they probably wouldn't have posted my video because it wouldn't have been interesting enough. But let's just say I say that, and let's say they try to engage me in conversation. Why are you voting for yourself? I would have given them the same answers I've been giving y'all for the last month. And if they tried to engage me in debate, depending on how long the debate went, maybe I would engage them and just let them know. Because often they're trying to get you on an angle. They are actually almost every time they're on one side or another. So let's say they're on the Harris side, right? And let's say I was a person who said, I'm going to vote for Trump. Let's say I was that. I said, I'm going to vote for Trump. And they're a Harris person, but I don't know they're a Harris person. What they're going to do is get me to say why, and they're going to start debating me on whatever I say. So let's say the economy, or I say, well, he's going to fix the deficit, or he's not going to take us to war anymore. Whatever I say, they're going to throw something out, and they're basically trying to get a gotcha moment with me on camera, and then they're going to post that on their social media like, hey, look at me. I just beat this person who said they're going to vote for Trump. First of all, is that going to change my mind? No. All it's going to do is get your supporters happy, but is that actually going to do anything? No. And here's another thing I got to say while I'm on the subject. A whole bunch of celebrities and athletes and just celebrities and athletes, famous people, co-signed who for this election? All right. It wasn't Trump. It wasn't Trump. Yeah. If you took all the celebrities and famous people who offered an endorsement for this past election, I would say 95% of them were for Harris. I'm probably being that's not even enough. It was probably 98%. I would say 98. Actually, no, let's say 97%. 97% of the known people, like people you just know their name just for who they are, who offered to be in alignment with either candidate in this past election, 98% of them, 97% were for Harris, and she still lost. And in 2020, they were for Biden. And again, I already explained 2020. 2016, they were for Hillary, right? And in 2012, they were for Obama. 2008, they were for Obama. What does this prove to us? Because Obama won twice. Biden allegedly won. Hillary lost and Kamala lost. Is that celebrity endorsements don't mean shit when it comes time for people to vote. People do not vote based on what a celebrity said. Now, people may affirm the decision that they've already made based on what a celebrity said, but they are not being persuaded by the celebrity. In other words, if you're a Taylor Swift fan and then Taylor Swift came out and said, I'm voting for Kamala, you didn't all of a sudden say, damn, I was going to vote for Trump, but since Taylor Swift said it, I'm going to go vote for Kamala. Nobody did that. Nobody says that. And again, all the celebrity endorsement does is affirm maybe what you already believed, or it just gets some excitement. It does draw attention. We can't ignore that. When Taylor Swift said, I'm voting for Kamala, everybody talked about it for like 3 days. Well, how'd that work out? LeBron James said he was voting for Kamala. How'd that work out? All right. Beyonce came and appeared at a Kamala rally in Texas. How'd that work out? Celebrity endorsements do not sway elections, even though everybody gets all excited and everybody's all talking about it. And I will talk about it. I will use it because celebrity names draw attention. All right. This is the reason why I've been talking about this election for the last month, because it draws attention. And if you're going to get on in the media, any kind of media, you have to get people's attention in order to get your point across. If you don't have their attention, then they won't hear what you have to say. So I get it, using these people for their attention, but does it actually do anything? No. And the Democratic Party spent a lot of money on influencers and celebrity endorsements during this campaign, and they still lost. How much money do you think they paid Cardi B to fly to Wisconsin and give that quote unquote speech that she was reading off a phone because the teleprompter wasn't working? They had to pay her for that. She didn't do that out of the kindness of her heart. Jennifer Lopez, Oprah Winfrey, Beyonce. I don't know about LeBron. LeBron just said it after a game, so he didn't have to do anything. But all those people who showed up in places and they were posting on their social media who they're voting for, those are paid endorsements, folks. In case any of you didn't know, those are paid endorsements. They are not doing that out of the kindness of their hearts. All right, these people are capitalists, and I got nothing against capitalism. I'm all for it. But understand, these people are paid to say what they're saying. They're not doing it because they truly believe it. They might say that, but they don't really believe it. It's all nonsense. I'm bringing all that up just to point out the cognitive dissonance of the Harris supporters, and I don't think they're ever going to get out of it. I think most people are never going to get out of it. Most people live a life of cognitive dissonance. There are a bunch of black people out there. Some of you maybe listen to me right now who every time something doesn't go your way and there's a non-black person involved, you default to, well, it's racism. All right, that's bullshit. That's an excuse. That's what it is. It's an excuse. You're giving yourself an excuse. And if you're a female, something doesn't go right, well, it's misogyny. Bullshit. Excuse. Or whatever other trait you want to give yourself that you think is working against you is an excuse. You got to take ownership of the situation. The cognitive dissonance is the feeling of conflict between what you thought things were, how you realize things are, and the choice that you get to make right there in that moment. That's what it is. What's the choice that you make right there in that moment? Am I going to continue believing what I always believed, i.e. keep taking the blue pill, or am I going to take the red pill and wake myself up to what is actually real, which is right in front of my face? That's a choice. Each of you has a choice, and every day you get to make a choice. So this election just puts a magnifying glass on it, but this is not limited to elections because, again, most of what happened in this election, nobody's life has changed over the last 2 days, except maybe Trump's and Kamala and people who work for them. But everybody else, we just talking about it. Your situation didn't really change. Maybe it'll change when Trump takes office and he actually starts doing stuff, but we still have, 2.5 months away from that. You can start using this right now. So with all that said, let me go through the comments here and address some of your comments. I'll start over on YouTube, then we'll check. Let me see if we got any comments on Facebook. Do I have a comment on Facebook? Do I see it? It says there's a comment, but I don't see it. All right, so LinkedIn, I can't see the comments. So if you're on LinkedIn commenting, I cannot see it. Again, LinkedIn's whole setup here is really annoying. I do want to make sure my lives go to LinkedIn, but if there is a comment, I can't see it. So I'll respond to you all after I'm done, after this publishes. But let's start over on YouTube. LVSML says, thoughts on Project 2025. I'm going to do a whole live on that probably next week. Back when my TikTok is back, so I got my full audience because I appreciate all of you in these audiences. But my TikTok audience, when I do live, is bigger than all the other platforms. So TikTok kicking me off. I think they had a person watching me yesterday because I had like 18,000 people watching me live at the moment that they kicked me off TikTok yesterday. So I think it was something that I said. I don't know what it was, but we'll see. So yes, I'm going to talk about Project 2025. I'm going to do a whole live on it next week. So I'm going to do another live tomorrow, and then I'm off Monday and Tuesday because I'm traveling, and I'll be back Wednesday. Wednesday, I'm back on TikTok because that's going to be the end of my week-long, what they call it, suspension, and then we'll talk about it. So someone said, what companies just pass on, when you can get to it, won't companies just pass on the tariffs to the customer? Well, we'll see. We'll see if Trump actually does it. See, this is the thing about Trump, is that everybody has to understand. He often speaks in metaphors, folks. Don't take everything that he says literally. The problem that a lot of people have is because they don't like him. They take everything he says literally and they try to dissect it. Not everything he says is he literally going to do. Some of them he doesn't even actually, very few of them does he actually have the power to do. He can't even do a lot of things that he says. So when he says I'm going to give full immunity to police, he doesn't have the power to do that. He's saying it as a metaphor to tell people when he says I'm going to give full immunity to the police. What is he saying? He's saying the police will be able to protect you and not worry about, let me not catch this criminal because they might put me in jail if I go catch the criminal and beat him up, or they might put me in jail if I shoot this guy who's about to shoot at me. What's the point of him saying that? What vision is he giving you? He's giving the vision to the people that criminals are not going to be able to run roughshod over you, the citizen, because I'm going to let the police do their damn jobs. That's what he's saying when he says I'm going to give full immunity to the police. The president does not have the power to give full immunity to the police. The president is not even in control of the police. That's a state level thing, not a country, not a federal thing. I'm using that as an example, but all these things that Trump says, these are metaphors, everybody. He's a salesperson. This is what salespeople do. They talk things up. It's called puffery. It's a legal term that you're allowed to use to talk things up that does not have to be interpreted literally. The problem that a lot of people have is that when you dislike a person, you take everything they say literally and you dissect it. When you like a person, you take what they say directionally and you understand it. If your 4-year-old was saying something to you and they didn't say it perfectly, would you dissect their words and tell them that they're wrong? Of course not, because you're trying to understand them directionally because you love them. But if someone you hate says something, you're going to pick apart every single word and try to make them look bad. That's what people do to Trump. LVS, I'm not saying you're doing that. I'm just using that as an example. So is he going to do these tariffs? He would have to go through Congress to do that, and we'll see. And Congress may not be too keen on that because everybody in Congress has to win re-election too. So their record can be held against them. I'm Queen A says media paid by these elite folks. Same people own everything. Well, the media has to learn. They have to learn from this, and I don't know if they will. We'll see. Biden campaigned on the fact that he wasn't Trump. Very lazy campaign. Well, all three of them did. Hillary did it too. World Breaker says Trump 2024, we got him. Well, he did win. You're right. Queen A says ultimately they are all puppets. Well, if you take a paycheck, you got to do what the boss says. I would say that. O-Dog says Stop the Steal was about sending the illegitimate votes back to the state legislatures. Yeah, right. But they were not able to prove it. That's the whole point. O-Dog says Trump's main issues is that he fails to control the narrative. I would push back on that, O-Dog, is that he's not trying to control the narrative. That's the point. The narrative that Trump controls, because he actually does control it, is that he controls the narrative by having everybody talk about him. That's the narrative. The narrative about Trump is that he just wants you talking about him. He doesn't care what you say. Just the fact that you're talking about him is controlling the narrative. So we're just using different definitions of control the narrative. So most of us, and this is what makes Trump unique, most of us, when we think control the narrative, it means any time somebody puts something out about us that's not true, we go correct the record. Oh, no, I didn't say that. I didn't say this. I didn't do that. I didn't do that. See, Trump doesn't do that. He's basically immune to it. You notice that he doesn't get that mad when people say things that are not true about him. They repeat the hoaxes. He'll mention it like, no, that's not true. That's already been proven not true. But he doesn't get all excited. Most people get really excited when you say something that's not true about them. He doesn't care. The whole point is you're talking about him. And then people like me come in and we go correct the record. That's the power that he has. That's how influential. He's influential in that way that he has a whole group of people who are coming out and saying, wait a minute, y'all, that's a lie. And he has these people who are doing it for him. And he doesn't have to do it himself. And that's just part of his personality. So controlling the narrative is different for him than it is for most people. O-Dog says January 6th was an exercise of the First Amendment. The speech was. The trespassing on the Capitol was not. And I said that. Which affirms the right of people to peaceably assemble, petition the government. Yes. Queen Ace says protests are occurring in Chicago and NYC after the election, but it's not a mainstream. Yeah, I knew there would probably be protests in big cities. Like Miami is not it's not a ton of black people here in Miami, so it's probably not going to happen here. But they're doing another women's march. Remember that women's march they did in 2016 with the pussy hats? They're doing that again. O-Dog said BLM riots were catalyzed by the CIA, paid provocateurs. All right, possibly. I get it. I've heard that. DC said no violent protests, and I can guarantee that because I live in NYC. S/ says don't forget AI. What about it? I'm Queen A's just been seen chanting. I honestly don't live in either area. I'm not political, but I do worry about our society. Well, you should worry about society for bigger reasons than the politics. It's just people don't have principles. That's the biggest thing. Queen A says Hillary's actually very smart, not political here, but she also actually received the Democratic nomination that was earned. Yes, Hillary did and Biden did. They both went through the process and they won the nomination. Kamala did not win the nomination. And I think that might have been what TikTok kicked me off for yesterday because I said it multiple times. And I think that's when they kicked me off because I went and watched the exact point when they kicked me off. It was after I said something like that. O-Dog says black women like Kamala Harris voted for her at 92%. That's a monolith pretty much. Yeah, they did. O-Dog said I wrote my name in a ballot in 2016. I was glad Hillary didn't win. I studied medical science. She was too beholden to GMO. Well, she's a career politician, so she didn't have a choice. The celebrities that vote for Trump rise in popularity. Nick Bosa. Yeah, but there were way more on the other side. And O-Dog says LeBron's hurt the NBA badly, not been a good ambassador for the league nor the game. Well, his fans would disagree with that. Javi said, I'm joining a Zoom call tomorrow. People who are mourning the tragic results of the election. What are one or two things you will bring up to them, get them out of their cognitive dissonance? Well, first of all, Javi, why the hell are you getting on that Zoom call? That's my first question. Why are you joining the Zoom call? Are you forced to join the call? And why are you getting on it? That's my question to you. And then my other question is, why would you think it's a good idea to get them out of their cognitive dissonance? That's a very hard thing to do. Most people are not, susceptible to being brought out of cognitive dissonance. I got out of mine because I happen to be a critical thinker and I happen to like to look at things objectively, but most people are not like that, Javi. So I would suggest to you that, and I'll wait for your answer, but I'm assuming that maybe you have to get on the call. So if you have to get on the call, I would suggest you just be quiet. You get on there, try to tell people everything that I've told you here today is, first of all, it's going to be exercise in futility because most people are not critical thinkers, so they don't want to hear that shit. And secondly, you're not going to be successful. Oh, I just said that. And actually, secondly, what's going to happen is you're going to get attacked is what's going to happen. And you may feel good because you said what you wanted to say, but you won't prove your point. Your point will not be proven nor received nor proven. Grand Duke 1865 said, thank God Trump went. I'm on Instagram now, looking at the comments. If there are any that I need to address. Soul Art said, I didn't think of that, but you're right. Where did all those votes go? Well, they didn't go anywhere. I think a good amount of them were people. They just people who don't show up to elections. Last one being a landslide, undisputed. Yeah, well, he did win the last one. He stomped her out in this one. Lou Porina said Trump deserved to win. Bobby Kennedy supporters helped. Yes, they did. They did. Nori said my candidate won. I didn't have a candidate. And let's see. I had to block this person, Nori. She was spamming my comments. She didn't like what I was saying. So R said you voted for Hillary in 2016. Yeah, I did. That's before I took the red pill. So R said I watched Trump on The Apprentice, and that's when I saw that he valued competence and merit, not race. Yes, I mean, in business you have no choice. In entrepreneurship you have no choice. Tara says spice and dice is disgusting. That's right. Thank you. Honor Garrett. Good to hear from you. Thank you. Yeah, Tara said call it out TDS. Yeah, I call that out all the time. I might do a live just on TDS. Actually, I'm going to put that in my notes because I probably do a live on Trump derangement syndrome. It'll be a good topic. And I think actually the interesting thing about Trump winning is that people won't want to talk about it from now until he gets inaugurated. So we got 2.5 more months of talking about this stuff from some angle. And I'm good at coming up with angles. One Race Alliance, good morning. Good to see you. Soul said, I love how people keep it civil in society by not arguing with Trump haters, but they made their voices heard in a voting booth. That's all you should do. I mean, it's not worth arguing with someone who disagrees with you. You're not going to change their mind. I heard it was the most expensive campaign season of all time. Yes, a lot of money to be made in political campaigning. So any of you want to make some money, figure out a way to get in there. All right, there's money available. One Race Alliance said you're working OT today. I started a little bit late today. So this is about the normal way. I just started late. Tara said, are you streaming through Zoom or restream for LinkedIn? Try Zoom is better for comments. I was doing it on Zoom, but it wasn't working the right way. So I'm using Rumble Studio allows you to do it, Tara. So I'm using Rumble Studio for LinkedIn. When I was using Zoom, it wasn't coming through the right way. And anyway, when it comes to LinkedIn seems to get the fewest comments. So I don't really need it right now. And especially with what I'm talking about, Tara, if you think about it, people ain't on LinkedIn listening to me talk about this. They might be listening, but they're not going to get in there and comment because who wants to have their name in the comments and be saying of the title of this live? I'll use the MAGA hashtag. You think somebody wants to comment on this and let it spread to their network that they commented on somebody doing a live stream about Donald Trump with the MAGA hashtag? So I don't think they even want to show their faces. So if you're watching me on LinkedIn, but you're not commenting, I get it. So I don't really need the comments from LinkedIn. I don't think there will be many. People don't want to put their names next to this. Tara said, I want to remind people there are no political saviors. Take responsibility for yourself. That's correct. Tara said, there's a boat ton of collective trauma happening in which people do their own research to challenge their own beliefs, do the inner work. Well, you keep wishing, Tara, that ain't happening. Not everything you see, watch and read isn't a fact. And majority has roots of fear, rage, hate, manipulation, done with great intention. Yes. Your topics are always great. Dre, must need it. Thank you. TDS and must need it. Yeah, I'm going to do that because LinkedIn are professionals who don't want to be wrapped up in this conversation. Yeah, technically professional in name. They are. But the thing is, people don't want to connect their name to a live on this specific subject. It's not so much that they don't have an opinion. Everybody has an opinion. I hear from a lot of people privately that they don't make themselves known publicly. That I will tell you. Nicole says, I've been watching and listening to your lives via TikTok or IG every morning while working. Thank you. The info you give is very knowledgeable. Thank you. Thank you, Nicole. Glad you found me on TikTok. Hopefully TikTok doesn't kick me off permanently next time I transgress. But I don't know. It doesn't seem to have a problem with me talking about Trump. I think yesterday when I was mentioning Kamala, that's when I got the suspension. But I don't know exactly what I said, so we'll never really know. Javi said it is voluntary. Yeah, so Javi, why are you getting on the call? It was voluntary. Why are you doing it? Now, are those people you getting on this call with? So this is Javi over on YouTube. He says tomorrow he's getting on a Zoom call with people who are mourning the quote unquote tragic results of the election. One or two things to bring up to get them out of their cognitive dissonance. Well, just explain to them how they're in cognitive dissonance. That's what you would do is explain to them why they are in cognitive dissonance. But Javi, I would suggest you not do that unless somebody directly asks you to help them. I would suggest you not do it, because you're not going to gain anything. You might satisfy your ego by putting them in or telling them something, but are they actually going to listen? The answer is no, they're not going to listen. So I would not waste my time. I would maybe get in there and listen. If I was you, I would get in there and listen, just because what I would do personally, just based on the way I have things set up. I would take the stuff that I hear them saying and I would use it for content for my future live streams. That's what I would do if I was getting on the call. I wouldn't get on there just talking to them, because why waste time just talking to those, who knows, 100 people, 20 people, 10 people, when I could take that same content and talk to thousands of people. That's what I would do. But if you don't have an audience and anywhere you can take the material, what's the point? What do you get? What do you gain? How have you from the conversation? Tungsten Fungus says, that's true. Most people are so stuck up their delusion that they can't hear anything else. That's correct. 100%. Javi said, professional Slack community I'm a part of is holding an open space to talk. Yeah, I would go there for entertainment purposes and for content sourcing purposes only. DLBJ, good morning. Nostalgic Soul said, Trump has helped a lot of people throughout his life and career. Mainstream media never wanted that side of him to be seen. Well, they did before he got into politics. Before he got into politics, Donald Trump was on The View with Whoopi Goldberg and all those women. Go look up the video of Trump being on The View. I think it was like either 2013 or 2011. Trump was on The View and they loved him. They all loved him. Now they're like, they can't believe that he exists. Oh yeah, I got to see what The View talked about yesterday. They go, oh yeah, they did. I saw a little clip from the chick Sunny. Yeah, so The View, that'd be funny. Kettle Up Farm said, Diamond Dave shows people how to trade options. Man, don't be spamming my comments. Keep it up, fam. And Javi said the community is very pro DEI. Yeah, so why are you going into there? I wouldn't even do it. So we're going to wrap this up, folks. I will be live again tomorrow. I'll be live again tomorrow at 8 a.m. Eastern. I started a little bit late today, but 8 a.m. Eastern, I'll be live tomorrow. What we'll be talking about, we will see. I got a bunch of things we could talk about. So y'all be here then on these apps. I am still able to publish on TikTok like my clips, but I can't go live on TikTok. So that's the thing that I'm restricted from. But if you want to follow me on TikTok, I'll be there as not live, but I'll be publishing normally. Tomorrow is Friday. Then I'm off Monday and Tuesday because I'm traveling next week, but I'll be back Wednesday. I'll be back on TikTok on Wednesday, and then we'll be back normal. I think I got kicked off around 8:30, so I'll probably start later on Wednesday just so I can align it with TikTok and we can get back to our normal business of talking to all the audiences all at the same time. WorkOnYourGameUniversity.com. You want to work with me directly, have me as your direct coach. That's where I'm spending my time when I'm not doing this. That's what I'm doing, Work on Your Game University stuff. Everybody have a great Wednesday. We out here.